Classically Dad. Welcome to the channel. Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. Thomas Jefferson. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment provides protection of 5 basic rights: speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. The First Amendment guarantees the press's freedom. This means that media in all forms, from print to video, is not subject to censorship by the government. It also means that the government does not have the right to try to control or block specific reports from being published by the press. The freedom to express and disseminate information without fear of punishment is a cornerstone of democracy for individual citizens. Prior to the ratification of the Constitution, the British government made it illegal for colonial media to publish unfavorable information about England or its leaders. Once the colonies declared their independence, they knew a free press would be critical to a democracy in which the government is accountable to the people. While still under the thumb of the British, Samuel Adams and others used the Boston Gazette to publish their opposition to British rule. The New York Journal was founded in New York City, but it had to shuffle to multiple locations around the state to ensure that publication could escape interference from the British Army. The Pennsylvania Journal redesigned its paper's masthead to resemble a tombstone. They did this to emphasize that British actions were killing American rights. The essential role of the press, often called the fourth branch of government, is to agitate, investigate, and scrutinize our leaders and institutions. When the press examines the actions of government, the nation benefits. News organizations should expose corruption and cover-ups, deceptions, deceits, illegal actions, and unethical behavior. The United States press enjoys a great deal of freedom to report critically and objectively on a wide range of information, opinions, and important issues of the day. Although, sometimes our country misses the mark and this right is infringed upon. As the Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services headed to a meeting at the state capitol, a reporter from a public news service trailed after him in a hallway. He had a question that the government official did not want to answer. He persisted and asked twice more. When there was no response, the journalist said, "You refuse to answer? Tell me no comment." After persisting in his questions for nearly a minute, the journalist was pulled to the side by officers, handcuffed, and arrested for the willful disruption of governmental processes. The charges were eventually dropped, but not until after he had spent 8 hours in a local jail and posting a $5,000 bail for his release. Some argue that the most glaring attacks on the press have been self-inflicted. Media outlets have been accused of bearing stories that could negatively impact their chosen political side. Some journalists seem to aggressively attack specific government agents with which they disagree, while taking it easy on those whose political opinions align with their bias. There are some limitations to freedom of the press. Libel. The freedom of the press does not give anyone the right to publish false statements that are damaging to a person's reputation. In 2019, Nick Sandmann began filing several multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuits against 6 different media outlets following an encounter with a Native American activist at a protest at the Lincoln Memorial. The lawsuits accused these media outlets of defaming Sandmann in false and defamatory articles that suggested he assaulted or physically intimidated the Native American. A video later surfaced showing Sandmann's innocence. Anti-Obscenity Law. The Supreme Court has ruled that it is constitutional to legally limit the sale and transport of obscenity. The First Amendment was designed to protect the freedom to express political views and opinions. Pornography has nothing to do with the First Amendment. The Supreme Court says plainly that obscene material doesn't receive First Amendment protection. National security. The Supreme Court has decided that the press has no right of special access to places or information not shared by the public generally. This is typically due to issues of national security. One such example was former CIA employee Edward Snowden, who in 2013 shared with journalists highly classified documents from the National Security Administration. His leaks revealed evidence and details of surveillance programs perpetrated by the United States government. Snowden was denounced by some as a traitor, while others supported his actions, calling him a hero and a champion of freedom of the press. The United States charged Snowden with 2 counts of violating the Espionage Act and theft of government property. He was called the most wanted man in the world. He now lives in Russia, where he was granted the right of asylum. Contempt of Court. In 1789, United States courts had the power to punish by fine or imprisonment at the discretion of the court all contempt of authority in any cause or hearing. This power was demonstrated when in 1827 Judge James H. Peck found an individual in contempt for criticizing his decisions in the newspaper. His ruling was found to be in violation of the Constitution. He was impeached by the House of Representatives, and Congress adopted a law limiting the court's power to only punish behavior carried out in the courtroom. Although your right to criticize the court is protected by the Constitution, you do not have the right to commit contempt in the courtroom. Presidents from Thomas Jefferson to Franklin Roosevelt to Barack Obama to Donald Trump have all complained about the media, which usually means the press is doing its job. The task of the press is to be watchdogs, not cheerleaders. They launch discussions on fundamental issues and reveal the information that sinister people would rather hide. They hold our leaders accountable for their decisions. Even our first president, George Washington, wore weary of those covering his administration, calling them infamous scribblers. Presidents are government officials, and while they are free to complain about the scrutiny of the press, for them to actively work in effort to silence the media is unconstitutional. Of the 5 rights protected in the First Amendment, speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion, which do you believe is most crucial, and why? Is there a modern attack on the freedom of the press? What do you think the founders' response would be to modern media outlets holding a particular political bias? If you were to reform the Constitution, what new restrictions would you place on the press? How would you make them more free? Do you perceive the antagonistic relationship between government leaders and the press to be helpful or detrimental? Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. It's so nice when you share. Thanks for visiting. Classically, Dad.